Hey everyone, before we start the video, I just wanted to announce that Danielle and I are going to be attending RTX this July 1st through the 3rd in Austin, Texas. It's our first time going, so we're pretty stoked about it. If you are looking for tickets, check the link in the description and use code DattoDanielle at checkout to get the early bird rate on your badges. Save you a few bucks getting tickets to go to the show. Hope to see you there. Can I help you? Hello everyone, welcome back to Datto. I really need a build to impress my friends, the ongoing series. Today, I want to cover some of the ideas behind Solar 3.0 for Titans specifically, and then we're going to do the other two classes in the next two videos. We're mainly going to be covering what is probably the most popular build, but then also explore some branches that I think you can tinker with if you want to experiment or change things up. I was hearing slander towards Solar Titans at the start of the season, saying they're not big damage dealers like Bungie said that they were going to be, and blah blah blah. And I hope by now people have seen that that is absolutely not the case. Not only are Titans capable of massive amounts of damage, they are also capable of staying very alive while doing it, depending on your exotic choice. Best of all, this main build that we're going to be covering utilizes 0 seasonal artifact mods, meaning it will be just as good in Season of the Haunted as it will be in any other season, barring any nerfs. We will still experiment with the seasonal mods though. The aspects we're going to be using in this particular review are Soul, Invictus, and Roaring Flames. Consecration is a very fun attack though, and through the use of elemental wells and ignite effects, you can turn it into a very powerful AoE attack, which I will attempt to discuss in this video as well. You do need to choose between Sunspots and Roaring Flames though, and personally I think the choice is Sunspots, as we will discuss. Yeah, I just finished the video and I didn't discuss this. I go with Sunspots for the ability regeneration. For this main setup though, we're going to be taking advantage of the new resilience changes by going for 100 resilience and combining that with Loreley's Splendor helm and our throwing hammer. Loreley's got changed up a little bit in Season 17 from its original mechanic. Sunspots now automatically heal you as a part of Soul Invictus, which used to be Sun Warrior, so now Loreley's gives a boosted version of this effect when it procs. When you're critically wounded, if you have full class ability energy, it will consume it and drop a Sunspot, which gives this boosted restoration effect, in addition to Soul Invictus. What this ends up doing, when combined with Tier 10 Resilience, is makes you nearly unkillable in anything under Master level content. Resilience in Season 17 received a major boost in effectiveness at higher tiers, giving you increased damage resistance in PvE. At Tier 5, this is a measly 8%, giving a sort of reverse diminishing returns effect, almost parabolic, as you scale into the higher tiers. At Tier 10, this is a 40% damage resistance bonus, and we are combining it with one of the strongest healing effects currently in the game. Not only that, but our wall cooldown is going to be as brief as possible thanks to maxed out resilience and fragments. Another bonus of this build is that you can almost completely neglect recovery and strength as stats. Recovery is going to lose value here because if you're playing your cards right, you should basically always have the restoration buff on you, negating the need for recovery. This restoration buff is a constant heal that doesn't stop when you're damaged, which is why it's so strong. You should just be chaining Sunspots non-stop. Strength is also not really needed because 1, you should be getting your hammer off of the ground after you throw it, and 2, even if you lose it, your Sunspots should be giving you a decent amount of energy to restore it. I can totally understand running with a decent amount of recovery and or strength though. My build happens to run a high amount of both, but that's because I haven't really collected any other armor with the stats that I would want for this build in the past 2 years. So this means we can dump a ton of points into Discipline to boost grenade output for even more Sunspots as a backup. You could invest into Mobility, boosting your movement speed to get around faster, or at least get to your hammer faster. I'm still avoiding Intellect for the time being because of the changes made to Intellect with the December 2021 patch that made primary weapon damage the best way to generate super energy, but I suppose it's not the worst, especially if you already have the gear for it. Something you're also going to want to do is make it so your powered melee, your hammer, is the priority melee, meaning you will throw it even if you are within actual melee range where you would deal a normal melee attack. You don't need to be point blank range to throw your hammer, but chances are that you'll have plenty of moments where you will be within normal melee range and you're not going to want to use a punch. When it comes to fragments, we have a whopping 4 slots, but only 3 if we choose Consecration. Ignite seems like something you might want to invest into, but I personally don't, at least not for this very base build that we're going for. Sunspots are very strong, and if an enemy stands in one for long enough, they might ignite, but for what I imagine you're going to be using this build for, I don't think it's necessary. I've also found that the sunspots will do enough damage over time that most things will just die before igniting. But if you can find situations where you can make your targets ignite and then actually kill stuff that isn't already going to die to your other sunspots, I guess go nuts. Ember of Singeing seems like an easy pick for this build. Class ability regen when you scorch targets, since you will be scorching targets non-stop. But considering how short our wall cooldown is when combined with Soul Invictus, if you wanted to run with something else, I think you could. The energy gain is pretty significant though, and you will basically always have your class ability cooldown if you pick this fragment. It's not a bad choice, but you could live without it if you wanted to experiment with other things, at least in lower level content. Ember of Torches is an easy pick though. This gives you and your allies radiant when you hit with a powered melee. This is all you're doing the whole time, is hitting with a powered melee. It is more or less a permanent buff on you and your teammates, giving 25% weapon damage along with boosting golden gun damage too. Giving a hunter permanent radiance enables them to also do some fun stuff with their solar abilities, so that's cool too. Ember of Solace is another excellent choice because we're going to be radiant all the time thanks to Ember of Torches, and will be in restoration all of the time thanks to sunspots. This one might seem redundant with how often you'll likely be refreshing these effects, but there have been a few times here and there where the extended duration has saved me. Again, it's not a bad choice. Finally, Ember of Benevolence, whenever that's unlocked, is going to be a good 4th pick because you will be constantly giving your teammates radiant, and more ability energy is always nice as well. For the 2 things that I said you could live without, that's Ember of Singeing and Ember of Solace, this is where if you wanted to spec into Ignite, you could, and we'll talk about this in a minute. This path does stray a little bit from the goal of the original build though, but it's not bad to have options. Mod-wise, I haven't really been infatuated with anything in particular outside of the seasonal mods. Melee Wellmaker and Elemental Charge is going to supply you with tons of solar wells and Charged with Light if you want that. That's your base. You could pair Melee Wellmaker with Font of Might for some very easy bonus weapon damage, supplemented with Elemental Time Dilation, and then that's just the end of it. You're good. You could go fully into Elemental Wells, which is probably going to be one of the stronger options. Bountiful Wells, stacking Melee Wellmaker to pop out a ton of them, and you could still throw in Font of Might too. Solar Elemental Well stuff it's just not really that exciting. Well of Ordnance nets you more grenade energy when you pick up a well to continue the grenade onslaught. That's something. Not too crazy though, you can live without it. Well of Life is absolutely redundant here. I would not bother with Well of Life, especially when we have Classy Restoration if you really want that. I'm also trying out Firepower, where when you use a grenade, you get some grenade energy back for the cost of a Charged with Light stack. I tried Reactive Pulse, where when you're surrounded and take damage, you let out a burst of arc energy for a Charged with Light stack. And yeah, you can live without that too. You don't. Just skip that one. Now, if we do start including the Season 17 mods, first off, feel free to skip this part if you're watching in the future. But secondly, this is where some of our fragment choices can potentially change. Classy Restoration, very strong mod from the season, feels redundant here when using Loreley specifically. So I'm not going to bother with Classy Restoration if I am using Loreley. I do talk about other exotics at the end of the video, so keep that in mind for the time being. Radiant Orbs isn't really needed because we're going to be Radiant via a Fragment, so that's fine. Rays of Precision is where we can start getting somewhere, like I mentioned earlier. You will be Radiant literally the entire time, and Solar Final Blows giving an Ignite is just going to further increase your damage output. Flame Harvesting has potential as well. Solar Exotic Final Blows giving Solar Wells, but with Melee Wellmaker, I'm not crazy about it. I don't think we need it. Solar Fulmination could be combined with Rays of Precision, although I've heard this mod is currently not working properly, so maybe wait that one out. Now, if you want to go down the Ignite path for Season of the Haunted, taking out the 2 Fragments, Ember of Singeing and Solace, I'm probably going to go with Eruption for bigger explosions, and then Blistering for the grenade energy within this specific build that we're doing. Reminder that it's fine to push into Ignite, but I don't think you should stray too far from this specific build if that's what you're going for. If you want to go Ignite heavy, I would say build around that specifically, and while probably using Rays of Precision, the seasonal mod, and then add in Ember of Char and maybe Ashes or even Wonder if you really want to go that route. This is going to turn your Solar Precision kills into like Rage of the Warmind cell explosions pre-nerf, but with no Warmind cell needed. It's just rage, and that's it. So why do I like this main build with Loreley throwing hammers? It allows you to do whatever you want in most low and mid-level content with almost no repercussions whatsoever. You can put yourself in the stupidest spots, you can do the dumbest things, but as long as you're hitting hammers, it doesn't matter. The regen, the damage resistance, the damage output that you have, it is crazy. I will say that it's not as AoE heavy as you might think, even with all the sunspots, and that is one of the downfalls of the build. You are completely reliant on hitting hammer throws and then picking up the hammer again for your damage. Emphasis on picking up the hammer again. That's all you do. Throw hammer, pick up hammer. That's it. The sunspots are nice as a bonus when it comes to the damage that they provide, but they only really work if enemies are coming at you or if they're in a cluster when you hit a target. Fortunately, in the new dungeon, they do just that. Not only that, but you're fighting in very enclosed spaces. In bigger rooms, in bigger areas, you're just going to be hoofing it from one enemy to another, and this build might not be worth your time. In something like Vault of Glass, this build's going to do very well. In something like Vow of the Disciple, it'll do well sometimes. Something to note is that Restoration is not like Soul Invictus when it comes to refreshing the buff. You need to walk in and out of sunspots to refresh Restoration. You cannot just stand there the whole time and have it. You gotta go in and out. Another thing that I enjoy is the very limited downtime. You're not really punished that badly, although it can have more downtime than something like the Stasis build I posted a while ago, because you are ultimately relying on an ability. If you throw your hammer off of a cliff, or you lose it in a sea of fire that you've made, you just gotta wait that sucker out. Granted, this is a low frequency event, so you won't have to worry about it for very long. This build is fantastic for enemy-dense situations, the new dungeon, certain lost sectors, probably on Legend more than Master, raids, although I am skeptical about its ability in Master and GM content. GMs aren't active yet, so I can't really test there, but unfortunately, the healing isn't strong enough to take on the toughest of enemies and champions. But even in Master content, if you're floating around 15 to 20 levels under, I think executing on this build might be a little bit of a struggle. Your teammates are going to need to take the lead when it comes to champion stuns and shield removal. Unless it's solar, you got that covered. Revving up the proverbial engine does take a little bit of time, but once you're at full stacks of Roaring Flames, you can basically 2-bonk most enemies in the game, even on Master. I tested during Insight Terminus, and the first target took 3 hits to kill with a hammer, so I advise trying to get enemies weak and then bonking them to death. But I will say, it actually worked quite nicely, and I was 20 levels underneath. The strat here is basically, you kill all of the adds, while your teammates kill champions. Your champion damage is pretty not bad, at least if you have 3 stacks of Roaring Flames. When it comes to survivability, you know, sometimes it just doesn't matter how much defense you have. There's no defense for the burst damage from some of these targets, and you will need to be methodic when it comes to navigating an area safely. There is some hope that it'll be at least a feasible strat in Master and GM content, but those of you looking to continue to play it safe won't be missing out too much. I think I would rather run with an Ignite-based build in higher tier content, as it is a bit safer and you don't need to have your teammates do a lot of the champion-based jobs. Although if you really want to run with an Ignite-based build, I don't think I even recommend Titan. I recommend Warlock, as we'll discuss in the next video. Master mode deaths aren't really a big deal because you can self-revive. You don't really need to take it very seriously, but in Grandmaster you do. It's not really the place for messing around, and dying in a weird spot while being too aggressive just leaves your teammates in a bad place. When it came to trying out a consecration-based build, when I could actually get constant melee attacks, it was really fun, but it relies incredibly heavily on being able to kill giant waves of enemies every single time you attack, at least 3 or 4, plus making sure you're actually killing something to trigger all of those melee well makers and bountiful wells and all that stuff. I will admit that I didn't play with this build for a particularly long time, but it just wasn't doing a lot for me. Using this attack and killing nothing means the end of the build until you get your cooldown back. And one thing that I don't like about certain builds is the pressure that they can create to keep them going. Using Consecration creates a lot of pressure to hit the most ideal attack every time, because if you don't, you need to wait. The hammer build has its moments where you'll lose the hammer, but they're few and far between. The great thing about this base hammer build is that we have other options when it comes to exotics. Loreley's is the safest choice, but let's talk about the others. Hellfire Heart. Not too fond of this one. The energy regen is half wasted because we get our throwing hammer back instantly when we pick it up, which means we're using it almost exclusively for our grenade, which is a more supplementary part of the build. Plus, we are punished for using our super, and our super is very, very good now that hammers get both the extended duration from Soul Invictus and the bonus explosions. Heart of Inmost Light, absolutely viable. But again, as I've said before with this exotic, it is an exotic that you really need to play around aggressively to see its true value. Although, given the nature of this exotic and how often you'll be boosting your grenade, I don't think it's asking much of someone to simply throw a grenade in between hammers, because you'll get it back pretty quickly. Most people are going to be more than okay just using Loreley's to survive and beating the crap out of everything with a hammer without needing or wanting to worry about the order in which you are throwing your abilities. Ashen Wake. Here's the thing with Ashen Wake. If this gave me a full grenade back in PvE, it's a no-brainer. It doesn't. It gives you half of your grenade energy back, and then you gotta work for the other half. Now, is that a bad choice? I don't think so. It allows you to step up your grenade game a lot with this build. We're now trading the survivability for enhanced burst damage on our grenades, which is not a bad thing at all. How much it really adds to the experience, though, I wasn't that impressed. Phoenix Cradle. Absolutely a fine pick for people who want to be a team player. Now your teammates get to benefit from all these sunspots. They get Soul Invictus, they get Restoration. I actually use this a good amount of the time because it's fun to buff my teammates. The majority of the time, I see a sunspot on the ground, I'll run over to it, and then I get nothing. It's fun the few times where someone else's sunspot actually benefits you because it just feels like it should. This is mostly a utility play, and the build still works 100% with this exotic, and you can just throw in Class E Restoration if you miss that Restoration ×2 buff. Path of Burning Steps. You know, not as impressed with this one either. Yeah, you'll be able to keep this more or less permanently on you, stacked to the maximum, and there will definitely be times where this ends up being pretty beneficial, but I also feel like we can just swap this out for a Font of Might mod and a well generator and get basically the same effect. The stasis stuff is barely relevant in PvE, so it's more or less a permanent weapon damage buff. There's nothing wrong with that, but I'd rather play into the ability part of the build. Severance Enclosure. Fits in very well. Powered melee hits give you an explosion. But this was another thing that I wasn't really impressed by when you have sunspots everywhere doing tons of AoE damage already. You almost don't even want this explosion doing the work because then you don't proc things from your subclass. Finally, Synthoceps. Increased melee and super damage when surrounded. This is a very potent, bonus, and I've heard many reports of people using Synthos with a lot of success. This enables you to take on even stronger targets first because you can kill them even faster than usual. It is the slightest bit riskier to use, but considering the whole point of this build is to be in the fray, you're probably going to have this active a lot anyway, especially in certain activities like the dungeon. But also considering that only the beefiest of targets are going to survive even one throw of your hammer, I could also see this being complete overkill depending on the activity that you're in. Okay, there's your Titan review for the season. For those of you who just want to read the build, check the description. I even have a Destiny item manager link so that you can copy the exact build that I was using at the time of this recording. Can I get some feedback from y'all? Do I need to explain all of this out as much as I do? Should I just cut to the chase? Because this video is kind of long, and I feel like build videos should attempt to be a bit shorter. The Warlock one is definitely going to be shorter because the build is so much more focused compared to the Titan one. But yeah, I just want feedback from everyone on these kinds of build videos going forward. Just let me know what you think. Should I shorten it up? Do you want me to keep elaborating on things? Do you want me to take a different approach? I'm looking for feedback from everybody. That's it. Thanks very much for watching. Enjoy the build. I will see you next time.